All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Hello.
Get started here. You probably know who we are. I'm Roger Pimentel,
And I'm Ann Pimentel.
and we're really glad that you joined us. We've been looking forward to talking about this topic, and we are talking this week about how do we elevate women's voices in the church. So this includes at church, but also just kind of in the church in general. And if you followed us at all, if you followed Ann at The Vision Beautiful or me at From the Overflow, this is a topic that we have talked about at some length. We've talked about patriarchy in the church. We've talked about complementarianism. This is a topic that we keep coming back to, and it's exciting. I don't know that exciting is the right word, but I am looking forward to we get to do this one together.
Yeah.
And so we get to have both voices represented here.
Yeah. So I would add that it's not just elevating women's voices, but how do we help build systems and structures to allow women to talk more and to listen to stories, and not necessarily allow in the permission sense, but
Right.
how do we make space for women to share their stories, the good, bad, and the ugly, whatever it is, whatever our experiences are. So we really want you to talk to us through the comments, leave a message, whatever it is. We want to address your thoughts and what you're experiencing, what's going on in your life. So this is obviously a topic that is very dear to my heart. It's something that I've struggled with, being heard, being valued, feeling like I'm being valued, whatever. And it wasn't always that way. I, for a long time, fit the mold. I was the good cookie cutter LDS woman. And I kind of glided along in my life in that until suddenly it didn't work for me anymore. And it's been hard ever since. Once you see patriarchy and you realize how all encompassing it is, you can't unsee it. It literally is everywhere for women, and it affects men too. This is not just something that is hard for women, but patriarchy hurts and affects men.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And when we talk about elevating women's voices or making space for women in church or helping women be heard in the church, I'm a work in progress on this. This is something that I also came to embarrassingly late. And it's mostly thanks to Ann that I'm where I am. I guess I don't want to take any credit for anything here. But yeah, just like Ann said, I coasted in the church for decades, never suspecting that women were having a different experience than I was in the church, and never suspecting that things might be difficult for women or challenging in any way, or that the church's history would be especially difficult for women, or that I was in a bishopric and I would plan sacrament meetings, and it didn't really occur to me to make sure to always have at least one woman speaking and not have a program full of men speaking. And so those are the perspectives that we are bringing to this.
Yeah, we all have blind spots in this, because for most of us, our whole lives, patriarchy has just been the water that we swim in. It's the air we breathe. And so it's not really anything that we're recognizing. I don't want to say normal people don't recognize this. But it's just how we're raised, It's the same as being white. I never realized what my whiteness was doing to my life until it was pointed out, that whiteness is something different. And I had to wake up to my whiteness, and I've had to wake up to patriarchy and its effects in the same way.
Yep. We've had a bunch more people join, so wanted to reiterate, we would love to hear your experiences in the chat, or questions, or anything like that. Shout out to Heather, who already commented about mentioning Heavenly Mother in a talk. So nice work.
Awesome.
Shout out on that one. So just a reminder, please jump in the chat. We have some comments also that we pulled from from our Instagram posts earlier that we'll be talking about as well. So if you've got thoughts or comments, please go ahead and jump in the chat.
Yeah, so this is kind of in our lives right now this week because of what Jared Halverson posted on Unshaken Saints. You know, that started a big conversation. If you haven't seen that video or his apology video, reach out to us. We can send you the links. We don't really want to go into a whole lot of detail of what he said right now, but he's working through some things and talking to women and hopefully taking a lot of really good steps to educate himself more and to be a better male ally for women. And I commend him for trying. It's hard. And I actually was talking to a friend today about the podcast that Faith Matters did with him and those three amazing women, Catherine Knight Sontag and Aubrey Chavez and Bethany Brady Spalding. They were incredible. And we were talking about how we hope that Jared doesn't burn out from this, because it is very easy to be overwhelmed and to just feel the weight when you're first starting to learn everything and you start seeing patriarchy everywhere and you start seeing all of the problems. And my friend said, I hope that he can rest, not in a way where he stops doing the work, but he needs to care for himself and like realize that he's in this for life now. If you're going to be an ally, you're going to be an ally for life, and you don't get to back out of that and go back to your life like that. I mean, you can, but that's a very disingenuous thing to do. So hopefully, if you've been in this for a while, hopefully you're also caring for yourself and, you know, having that awareness of your mental health and what you need. So the whole conversation happened. I think what it boiled down to, what I was reading in the comments a lot, was that women were just pleading to be heard. Finally be heard. And I think, I mean, women have been talking for decades about this, to be seen, to be heard, to be valued. And we may get it here and there. We may get the little breadcrumbs. That we're all kind of aware of those breadcrumbs that come every so often. You might have a leader that's really supportive. It often doesn't feel like enough. And that's disheartening when you talk and you push and you try new ways and you try to do it softer or, you know, whatever, that you just... It's frustrating when you aren't being heard and you don't feel valued in a place where, you know, in the church where we know that we're all children of heavenly parents. We know that we are all on the same level. Mm-hmm. When we're talking about our heavenly parents, they love us all equally. And so why is there such a difference here on earth? And it is because of patriarchy.
Yeah, and I'll draw a distinction. I'm interested in your thoughts in this, because there's a difference between policy, you know, and you could go all the way to women's ordination, or you could talk about any number of things kind of along that spectrum. There's policy, and then there's also just culture and behavior in the church, and mm-hmm. especially when it comes to bishops and local leaders. What do you think about that distinction?
I mean, I think it's really good, and I think it's important to remember what we have stewardship over, what we can influence and what we can change. We can't change policy that is church-wide. We don't have any access to that.
Right.
We can advocate for things on a cultural level. We can, you know, within our wards, within our stakes, we can talk to people. That's where the leadership roulette comes in. It may not have any fruit from our labors, but that is what we can advocate for more easily, and then even smaller, like in our families, in our marriages, we can talk about this. And let's actually, why don't you share the message that you got, the idea from that message that you got today?
Yeah, I got a DM from someone, from a woman, asking about how do I help my husband see this? How do I help him become comfortable with these ideas? She mentioned specifically her own faith expansion, and said her husband is just not comfortable with her bringing up some of the more difficult topics when it comes to women's issues in the church or potentially church history. And we'll just kind of shut those conversations down and
kind of saying she's not being faithful enough if she has those
right,
issues.
Right. And so her question was, how do I help my husband? And I, for one, have no idea. I hope that was helpful.
She was asking for podcasts or, ideas. And there are, I think that Faith Matters has done a lot of great conversations around this. My favorite podcast is At Last She Said It. But if he really struggles with things that are outside of what the apostles are saying, that's a really hard place to start, And so we've been lucky in that he has been at a place in his life where he's been ready to hear the things that I'm saying. And it has not been without practice and bumps along the way. And, we have had to try, and I've had to say to him, I need you to hear me on this. I need you to see this from my perspective, because the church is built for you and it's not going to look the same for you. And so I have had to advocate for myself to him, and thank goodness that he has been responsive to that, because I 100% understand that there are women that are not having the experience that I'm having with their spouse. There are, I don't even have a guess of how many women have issues and struggle with their husbands because the husband isn't at a place or isn't willing to hear and validate the woman's experience. And I'm so sorry if that's what you're going through. We can only imagine what pain that must be. And hopefully, if that is your experience, you can find somewhere else to talk about this and some other place to feel that validation, because that is important.
And those conversations were challenging because they uprooted what I had, 30 or 40 years worth of experience in, and the way that I was seeing the church or the gospel or whatever aspect we were talking about, got pulled up by the roots and had to be replanted in a different way. And again, that's very much a work in progress.
Yeah.
Now, you said something about, for this sister asking about her husband, maybe if it comes from an apostle or something. I think this is really tricky. I think the general leadership of the church, I don't think they're trying to oppress women.
Not intentionally.
Not intentionally. I don't think they're deeply misogynistic or that sort of a thing. And in fact, I pulled a couple of quotes just as examples, and these quotes are not meant to satiate anybody, but we hear these things in general conference. I pulled this quote from Elder Neil L. Anderson, who says, "Sincerely asking for and listening to the thoughts and concerns voiced by women is vital in life, in marriage, and in building the kingdom of God." The message is right on. Are we hearing that and applying that, or is that just platitudes that are being said in general conference? Now, again, I think some people would point to, if it's not backed by policy or by meaningful changes, then maybe it rings a little bit hollow. I think the message is good, but even with it being said by an apostle or a church leader, it's not always going to land for somebody who is where I was, which is very stable and confident in my church attendance and testimony and those sorts of things. And at the time, I didn't see any need to change. And just hearing this in general conference, you go, "Oh yeah, sounds great." And that's the end of it.
That's a nice thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you can't force anybody into understanding this. You can't force them to listen to and believe women, So it is really tricky that our prophets and apostles have been saying nice things about women for a long time.
Yeah.
President Nelson has said a whole bunch of things that are really great and nice. And it is frustrating that there's not a lot of action to follow it up. There's the local levels. Sometimes it gets lost in translation and they are stuck in, this is how we do it and it's always been done this way sort of behavior. And that's what works for them, and it functions. And so why would you mess with that? And so it is really hard when, we do hear words that are nice from our prophet
Right.
or apostles.
And largely they're the right words, like they're saying the right thing. It's the right message.
Yeah, but it doesn't land as well when there's not policy or action to back it up. And that's frustrating. It's hard. Yeah. And, I think that a lot of our, even if we go to doctrine, a lot of our doctrine, the way that we're teaching it does not fully align with what we actually believe is our doctrine. I've talked a whole lot about Heavenly Mother and how, the gospel topic essay says that she had a part in planning the plan of salvation. So why do we always say it's Heavenly Father's plan? There are things that we could do and change in our culture, in the way that we talk about things, that would align more with our doctrine and at the same time help to elevate women. And we just don't do that. It's not a normal practice.
I like that you brought up Heavenly Mother while we're talking about this, because this is another topic for me that I had to grow into.
I did too.
Well, yeah, I mean, because I think we all get raised with the same stories and the same kind of rationales and explanations of, oh, she's too sacred to talk about, or whatever these things are. And Anne, of course, was kind of years ahead of me on this one. But yeah, that was a topic that made me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because, I heard we're not supposed to talk about her or that sort of thing. And I really do think, and you alluded to this a moment ago, for men in the church, I think they have to arrive at a certain point where they are open to hearing these topics and these conversations. Yeah. Otherwise, I know for me, it would go in one ear and out the other, or just I would stop it from going in the one ear. Like it would even shut down the conversation entirely. But once I was at that point, like I did read the gospel topic essay and looked at a bunch of other things, and Anne recommended some podcasts and various things that helped me realize, like, oh, this is not like a weird esoteric fringe doctrine. Yeah. This is something that gets talked about in General Conference all the time. Yeah. And that's just one little example, one little topic example. Mm-hmm. But I really, men or women, I think need to get to a certain point where they are open to hearing the topics, the concerns around them. Otherwise, I just don't think, like you said, I don't think you can force someone into seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that we talked about in our post today, if you haven't seen our post, we went back and forth. We literally were passing the computer back and forth as we were doing this post. And one of the things we talked about that men can do to be better allies is stand up for women and kind of stop sexist jokes, comments, things that demean and hurt women. There was an example in our ward a couple of weeks ago where we were talking about Lucy Harris.
Yes, yeah. Martin Harris's wife.
Yeah, when she lost the plates and or the pages, and a man in our ward who's such a lovable, great man. He made a backhanded comment about women, and everybody chuckled, and and class moved on, and I sat there like, I'm going to slap him in the face. And I never would. I don't choose violence. But I wish that any man in the room would have been like, not cool, man. It's that easy. It doesn't have to be this like, this was a sexist statement, and that's why, I don't believe that we should say these things. It doesn't have to be a whole thing, but it could just be like a boo from the back room. and it would be acknowledged. It would be a way, like, I would know that person supports me as a woman.
Yep.
It's small, but it is huge. That impact is huge.
Yeah, someone commented on that post and said, I wish more men knew it can be easy. Mm-hmm. Which is, you don't have to like stand up and like do this thing, but you can dismiss the comment and in a
loving way, so the person doesn't feel embarrassed or
absolutely. And this stuff happens in Elders Quorum, and our Elders Quorum is full of good, faithful brethren, that sort of thing. But a comment will be made, and it will go so quick.
Yeah,
and that's actually one of the challenges here, is that somebody makes some offhanded comment about how we're passing around a sign-up sheet, but, our wives are way more organized, so they'll figure this out. And then it's on to the next thing, or, whatever the comment is. and just being able to break that up a little bit. And yeah, you don't have to call it out, but you can make some sort of comment about like, well, the women are going to do all the cooking, and be like, hey, actually, I like to cook.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to make a gendered comment about that. And that can be really challenging to speak up. I liked that comment that you don't have to like say the hard thing. You can just say something, or you can just boo from the back. I kind of like that. Boo!
If anyone from our ward is on here, if there's some boos, it might be coming from us. I also so I do a lot of anti-racism work, and in one of the very first trainings that I was in, they said you don't have to be the first person, but make sure you're the second, because that first person that is speaking up is probably very terrified in a lot of ways, or like it's a very hard thing sometimes to speak up against what is the norm in the room, and so it takes a lot of strength to be that first person to stand up. If somebody else is doing that and is able to do that, great, let them do that, but be that second person to say, I agree, this was really hard. And the way that it helps that first person feel just validated and that they're not alone, that's really important. And even if you don't agree 100%, validate their comment and then say, like, that's a really interesting point of view, and thank you for sharing that. Here's what I think, or here's how I approach it, or whatever. And that way to like be inclusive and like understanding of comments that are being made really makes a difference. Yeah. Especially if it's a woman saying something. I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say, in a co-ed room, it's even harder to say something. This actually came up in the podcast with Faith Matters with these women and Jared Halverson, where he was talking about the possibility of having Elders Quorum presidency or something come into the Relief Society room and just listen. And Catherine kind of pushed back and was like, the minute those men walk into the room, the power differential changes. And there are women, because of generation norms or comfort level or whatever, that will not speak up when there are men in the room. That is really unfortunate. Like, we have to change that generationally. Like, I get that is harder to kind of break out of and get rid of. But the fact that we are raising women to defer to men and, value men's testimonies and voices and think that they can do it better and they're the closing speaker and they're the closing prayer or they get the last word on things, that is something that we can break.
Yep.
We can get rid of that. We can teach young girls your voice, your testimony, your experience is just as valid and important as a man's is.
And I want to react to that story you were telling about Jared Halverson and the women on the podcast about when the men come in, the power differential changes. Mm-hmm. So, like, men who have joined us, like, raise your hand if you learned something from that little anecdote, because I did, and so this highlights the need to listen to women, mm-hmm. but like upstream a little bit, because I mean, if you, and I don't want to come across as unnecessarily critical of Brother Halverson, who's done a lot of great teaching and a lot of good stuff, but if we follow the sequence here, we have a man has an idea and goes, oh, this is going to be great. Yeah. We'll have the Elders Quorum guys go into Relief Society so they can listen.
So much.
Yeah. But you need a woman involved. You need women involved upstream from that to be like, hey, is this the right thing? Yeah. Are we on the right track here? And in this case, Bethany and who was on
Aubrey and Catherine
and Catherine were able to go, nope. So swing and a miss. And that's
try, but
because we, as men, we have something that seems like a good idea to us, and it just takes a moment to, asking the right people, and they can say, actually, no.
Yeah. I think there's, like, culturally, we have this thing where men are out in the workforce, and men are their bosses, they're leaders, they're involved, they've learned to, be outside of themselves and to talk and to, whatever all the words are. And so they bring that to church and they think, I know how to solve this. I know exactly what we need to do here. Mm-hmm. And I think what the problem is they don't think I wonder if a woman has a different perspective or a better
Right.
idea.
Right.
They just are in this like robot mode of like, I know how to fix this. I know how to solve these things. We can just go. And so the tradition, the cultural traditions just keep on happening.
Yep.
And they don't get addressed or changed. When really, if we work together as equal partners, if we follow the example of our heavenly parents in being side by side and working together to do anything, that is where the gold is. That's where we're going to have real impactful change. That's where like the ball is going to roll forward down the mountain. Like that is all the stuff that we have heard is going to happen. And I don't think we're utilizing our full potential yet as men and women in the church.
Yeah. There's one other topic I want to bring up, and then I'd like to go to the comments and questions. So please jump in the chat if you've got thoughts or questions or experiences that do or don't align with what we've been talking about.
And wait, really fast, I just want to acknowledge, not all women feel this way.
Great point.
We kind of talked about it that we didn't feel this way for a long time, but their experiences are also important. And the goal with all of it is to not push either end out. We need to make space for everybody to have their experience and to feel validated at church.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. Okay, jump in the chat, and while you do, I want to talk about how we tell stories.
Okay.
And because I've heard this, and I kind of haven't been able to forget it ever since, and it's now something I listen for a little bit. When stories are told as part of a lesson, as part of a talk, in church, they're generally stories about men. Mm-hmm. And when there's stories that are about women, sometimes it's a story about a man that just happens to have a woman also in the story.
Yeah, this was one of the comments that came in, was pointing this out, that part out to us.
Yep. So, I mean, one thing that I'm learning is that at some point men need to stop talking. So I'm going to stop talking. What are your thoughts on that?
It's very true. I went to a fireside recently with a woman, female general authority in our church, general leader, I guess is what her title is.
Sure.
100% of her quotes were men. Probably 90% of them were President Nelson. Cool. I love President Nelson.
He's the prophet.
Yeah.
Great.
That's great. Also, it was a woman speaking to women, like to a female Relief Society activity. Why can't we elevate women? And not just when women talk. I would love to hear a general conference talk by any one of our general authority leaders, and they only quote women. How amazing would that be if their stories were all about women and not like you're saying with the example in the comment was like a story where a woman was struggling with her testimony and a man came in and gave this blessing and saved the day sort of thing, and this poor little woman, was struggling and was rescued. That story is about the man. It's focusing and helping the man. And so, I mean, it just, and this speaks to having different genders in the, in sacrament meeting. When we've had all men speakers, we're getting stories about sports, about business, about soldiers, about plumbing. And I'm sitting there like...
A lot of plumbing stories.
I'm like, how am I supposed to apply this? Like, cool, I can learn the lesson that you're pulling from this story, but I am not interested in your sports story. Sorry. And I like sports. I play sports. And
she plays more sports than I do.
I do. And so it doesn't land the same way. And so, and also, like, I don't need women up there like, oh, the other day I was changing diapers. Like, I don't need motherhood stories 100% of the time either. Women are more than just mothers. Motherhood is great. It's beautiful. We are more than just mothers. And so there are women stories in the scriptures. You may have to do a little more work, put a little more effort into it to find them. But there are scriptural stories. MacArthur and Bethany have written a number of books that pull out the stories of women in all the different sets of scriptures.
Do you have your book?
Yes.
I'll plug it if you want.
I have written a book.
Anne wrote this wonderful book.
With MacArthur.
Changemakers, Women Who Boldly Built Zion. Just go get a copy and use the stories in your lessons. That's a shameless plug, but
that's okay.
The point here is actually valid, which is the stories are there.
Yeah.
Just go, whether it's this book or something else or online, there are stories.
The thing that we purposely did in this book was there's stories of all these different women in here, and every story kind of has a wrap up where there's more about the person. There's a leader quote that's maybe from a man or from a woman in the church that kind of supports the message of the story. But every single story has a quote by a woman on this colorful page. It's a different color for every woman, but we have quotes about every single thing that are just from women, and it took some effort to find those quotes, but there are things that there are websites that are available that have quotes from women. You can find it. Use At the Pulpit. You can look by speaker on the Gospel Library tool app thing. You can click into all of the female speakers and read just their talks. Our women are brilliant, and they are giving talks and quotes, and a lot of them do quote men in there. And so you have to make sure that you're actually pulling a quote and not them quoting a man.
Yeah.
But we have to do the work to bring women's voices into this a little more.
Yeah. Okay, my fault for making that a little commercial for a minute, but
I don't mind. It's fine.
So we have a couple of thoughts in the comments here. One calling out the "we need your voices" thing, which again I think is a really valid point. And could we say that any better? We absolutely need women's voices. And General Conference is this week, and so some people really go in and say, okay, how many women are we going to have speak in this session or in all of the sessions? And what's going to be the ratio? 10 to 1, 15 to 1, 20 to 1, that sort of thing. And I'm not encouraging anybody to go count, and that.
I will. I keep track with my friends. We have a spreadsheet for our different wards where we keep track of how many male and female speakers there are in sacrament meeting. So if anybody wants in on that, send me a DM. I'll give you the link.
Yeah, that's a super challenging thing. Again, that's not something we have any control over.
No, but we can take that to our bishops or whoever bishoprics and say, look, here's a year's worth of data on our ward. You've had 15 sacrament meetings that were just men. Yep. What's up? We have blind spots. And so having that data, even if it's not your ward, use someone else's. Look what's happening in this ward. I hope you can make sure that this doesn't happen in our ward. Yep. It can be that simple.
There was another comment from somebody on our Facebook post earlier today that said, and I'm
not
abbreviating.
Facebook post.
What's it called? Instagram? All right. And I'm shortening this, but she said, even those who intend to be allies don't see their blind spots sometimes. And I think that's absolutely true. I certainly know it's true for me. I intend to be an ally, and I absolutely have blind spots sometimes. And that can be true of our bishops and bishopric members and even general authorities, I think. And
truthfully, I have blind spots still. Like
sure,
I said,
yeah.
I am still trying to climb out from under this blanket, this heavy weighted blanket of patriarchy. And so there are things where sometimes I have women that I call and I'm like, is this a thing? What's going on with this? I still am trying to learn and figure things out. So don't be ashamed if you are learning and don't get it all. We are all, it's a journey, it's a process. We're all trying to figure this out. And like we said at the beginning, this is the water that we've been swimming in our whole lives. And so we can't expect for it to change overnight. We can't expect to understand everything overnight. This is going to be probably something we work on for the rest of our lives, unfortunately.
Yep, I agree with that.
I
do want to give a shout out to a comment from a woman who says she's a New Relief Society president and is having a book club around the At the Pulpit book.
That's awesome.
If you're not familiar with At the Pulpit, I can't remember the subtitle on it.
Women's Voices,
something. But it's a book of talks from women church leaders and just generally cool women.
It's so cool.
It's very, very good.
I have a few favorites in there. I keep them pinned in my gospel library thing because it is
Is the Francine Benyon talk in there?
Yes, Francine Benyon talk about LDS theology on suffering.
So good.
She's my great aunt. I love her talk.
So good.
Terrell Givens said that it was the best LDS theology ever written, or something like that in a podcast. There's one, I'm blanking on her name. I want to say it's something like Eddie something, but she spoke at a women's conference in Chicago in like 1930 or 1920 or something. It's wonderful. There are time things that are a little off and weird, that are ways they talked about things or whatever, but there are so many golden things in there. It's really cool.
Yep. All right, we're kind of at time here, I think. Is there anything else that you want to add to this?
I want to just, hey, Jenny and John, welcome, guys. I want to just close with this quote that we have in our introduction of the book, because this is something that if every man and woman in the church internalized and really held up as the gold standard, it would be pretty cool. So this is Melissa Inouye. She says, "All I ever needed to know about changing the world, I learned from my Latter-day Saint sisters." We have ideas. We have thoughts. We'd love to share them. We'd love to participate in a more meaningful and equitable way. And we need men to help us with this. In the patriarchal system that we live in, we can't do it ourselves. We don't have a seat at all the tables. We don't have an opportunity to voice our thoughts and our opinions and whatever. We don't have an opportunity to collaborate with men in meaningful ways. And so we need to do this together. And I just think it's more beautiful when we do. It's going to be so much better when we do.
We're all in this one together, and I think that's the first thing to learn, is that we're all in this together.
Yeah, this is not pitting us against each other. It's not replacing men with women. It is expanding. It's just broadening the tent. Let's make space for everybody to have a voice and have an opportunity to be present.
Great. All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Really great conversation. Thanks for participating in the chat. We will see you next time.
Yep. Send us messages if you have any thoughts or anything else.
See ya.
Bye.